Welcome everybody back to Oncology Unscripted. No script at all on this one. And the person who's joining me right now really doesn't need a script because she wrote it. She was the one who really defined, in my opinion, what advocacy is all about. Taking maybe one of the most difficult, if not the most difficult cancer, inspired by a personal story to change the outcome for people with pancreatic cancer. And I'm proud to say she's my friend, but she's also one of my mentors, as she has shown the way for so many as to how to really move the bar in advocacy. And this is Julie Fleshman, who is coming to us live. And we're so grateful, Julie, for your joining us. So first, welcome to Oncology Unscripted.
Thank you so much for having me.
You are so awesome. And you know, I think that. But let me start from the beginning, because a lot of people, we're coming up on a change in our world. And we know that advocacy is a critical component to our success in making advances in healthcare. It's not just handed to us. We have to push the forces around us to make it happen. Maybe give us your quick version of, what inspired you and the value of advocacy in the world of pancreatic cancer.
I have a personal story. 25 years ago now, my dad was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, 52 years old, died 4 months after diagnosis. And I was devastated, and I didn't understand why there was nothing offered for him, why there were no options. And about that same time, PanCan was founded, and I was lucky and privileged to be hired as the first employee almost 25 years ago. And I've really just watched, the field, the pancreatic cancer field back then. There was nothing. There was no federal funding. There was no philanthropy. There was nobody studying the disease. There were no resources for patients and families. And, I really believe PanCan has been a catalyst for changing that. And today there is a robust pancreatic cancer research community. And I think a lot of exciting things on the horizon for patients. And so, I believe advocacy, being the voice of the patient, not backing down when everyone tells you this isn't the way that we get things done, but it makes the most logical sense for overcoming a hard disease, and you keep at it and you keep chipping at it. And I believe advocacy is what gets us to where we're going. It accelerates the rate of progress. And in this case, I think has really helped to build a field that just didn't exist before.
Did all that stuff. Let's talk about the important stuff. Why did you pick purple for the ribbon?
So actually, our founder, who lost her mom to pancreatic cancer, her mom's favorite color was purple. That is the story.
I love it.
So yes. So, and it was one of the colors not taken, right? You need to have something different than the other cancers, but it is a great color.
But all kidding aside, yeah, I actually have several purple ties now because of the purple ribbon. But all kidding aside, I mean, you and your team have built an incredible infrastructure, not just a Hill presence and an advocacy there, not only a clinical research infrastructure that we'll talk about in a minute, but also like operators standing by. Patients can call in and get advice about what they should do with your team members. And in fact, I think that feeds back to the practicing clinician, because there's a lot that we don't know that's going on out there, particularly the general oncologist in the world of pancreatic cancer. I'm assuming each one of those was a decision and you needed to have the bandwidth to do it. Like how much struggle was that to get all of those resources together?
Yeah, I mean, you looked and said, okay, where are the gaps? And 25 years ago, there were a lot of gaps. One of the first and most obvious areas was, when someone is diagnosed with this disease, there's no place to go for information or resources. So building that patient services program in the early days, was so critically, I believe, important for helping patients be informed so that they can make the right decisions about their care and go in and be an advocate with their, doctor. Just as you said, many physicians don't see hardly any pancreatic cancer patients. And so to have someone come in and asking questions about clinical trials, about testing, about these different things, hopefully is also helping to educate the healthcare professionals as well.
Yeah, and you've given these folks a home, a club, if you will, where they can share thoughts. And I think with our, the bad cancers, there isn't that sort of survivorship that you see in some other cancers. So you've provided that place where people can interact and teach each other, which
Yeah.
to me is just critical.
I mean, everybody needs a cheerleader, right? Whether you're a researcher, a doctor focusing on this tough disease, patients and families, someone who's lost someone. And I think that's what PanCan does. We rally the troops. We make people feel good about the work that they're doing and that there is hope and that we're going to get there. We just all have to work together to do it.
Let me kind of drill down on something. You and your team were clearly setting those standards when you developed the concept around precision promise. This was understanding that molecular abnormalities occur. There are different ones in different patients. We have targeted therapies. Could we drive progress in pancreatic cancer through that? And a lot of work, a lot of investment, a lot of science went into this, but it didn't turn out the way you wanted. Maybe reflect a little bit about that and that experience for others, because, for me personally, I think it's exactly the right way to go and lessons we could share for others trying to do this in other diseases.
Yeah. So Precision Promise was an adaptive clinical trial platform. And so, basically the goal behind it was that you could develop a drug with fewer patients, less cost, less time. And so a way to accelerate new treatments for patients. All of that's true. And I think we learned a lot about sort of that process, and does this platform concept work? And I think the answer is yes. However, in order to make it financially work, you have to constantly have new drugs coming into the pipeline on the platform. And that was the part that turned out to be the challenge. Part of that was, you were convincing a pharmaceutical company or a biotech company to develop their drug, that PanCan was going to develop their drug. They were going to lose control. So that proved to be an obstacle. The pharma and biotech companies, changed their priorities and their strategies. And so maybe at one point they were developing this drug in pancreatic cancer, and 6 months later they were deprioritizing the asset. And so all of those things became challenging. The trial will go on. There's another organization that is going to launch a new, basically Precision Promise version 2.0, and learn from all the things that PanCan learned over the last, 4 years. And, some people have said it was before its time. Now there's so much excitement around drug development and targeting KRAS and all of these things that maybe, if we were launching it today, it would be a different story. We launched it in 2020 in the middle of COVID. It was, couldn't have been a worse time to be launching a big, basically phase 3 clinical trial for an organization like us that had never operated one before. So, we didn't have everything working with us as we did this, but we certainly learned a lot. And I think, the investigators that were a part of the network and the sites that were running Precision Promise, really that part ended up being pretty amazing, that network and the camaraderie and the sharing and the learnings. And, I think that those things will continue far beyond.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. We held here at Georgetown at the Ruish Center a think tank around pancreatic cancer, and we invited a bunch of very smart people, some of the smartest people in our country, around this disease who've made a lot of progress. And the whole point of the think tank was to say, why haven't we cracked this nut? Why have we a few new medicines? They've helped, but we really haven't cracked the nut the way we want to. And it was interesting. One of the participants got up and said, but wait, we have done it, or we're about to do it. And all we really need to do is give it time and ongoing investment. But we're about to reap these rewards in pancreatic cancer, whether it's targeting or new understanding of immune therapies, understanding how to control cancers and the like. I went into that meeting discouraged, thinking there wasn't going to be much in our summary document of what we were going to be able to share. But I left that meeting maybe as excited as I've ever been. And I'm an old GI oncologist, as excited as I've ever been about the future of where we're going in pancreatic cancer. Reflect a bit where you all are on that and that stance. And the one concern I had again is how do we make sure that that investment's there, to your previous point? How do we make sure that patients have access to these trials and new medicines around the country so that all can move this faster? What are your thoughts on that?
I've heard multiple physicians and researchers say that they feel we're at a tipping point, and I've never heard, that kind of talk before. I mean, 25 years, I've been told RAS and KRAS, super important, but it's undruggable. And suddenly it's druggable. And so that's pretty amazing and exciting. There are multiple companies with targets for KRAS for pancreatic cancer. The first phase 3 trial just launched last month. And then lots of phase 2, phase 1 trials that are in development. So I mean, this is exciting. This is really important.
Yeah, I was going to say that I saw a bunch of waterfall plots. Everybody knows what those are.
Yeah.
Where I'm used to seeing one patient and being excited about that.
Yes.
This was half the patients were below the line. We were seeing lots of responders in those patients.
Absolutely. And most likely it won't be the silver bullet. I think we've learned that in this disease. So the next step is, what do we need to combine it with? What is that going to look like so there's durability and we get, even we extend patients' lives even longer? I think that'll be the sort of immediate next step that we need to begin working on. But I was really heartened at the AACR pancreatic cancer meeting that already it feels like the field is thinking about that, and they're working together across institutions. They're getting together in groups and trying to solve the problem based on different expertise. And so I do feel like we have a very special community that knows this is hard, that this isn't just going to be the answer, and we're going to have to continue to work together. And PanCan wants to play that role, whether we're funding, advocating, educating, whatever that looks like, to ensure this moves forward for patients.
I would go one step further, Julie. I don't think we would be where we are today with that progress without your work and PanCan's work. And we are all looking forward to the future, in large part thanks to you. So I very much thank you for taking the time for talking with us today, and wish you well as now we watch that survival curve improve.
Thank you so much. I always appreciate your passion and enthusiasm and all you do for patients. So thank you.